Today, the national debt in the land of the free is reaching $20 trillion. Even the concept of a trillion is difficult for our minds to fully grasp, as there is very little within our physical human experience which relates to it. Trillion almost seems like a fantasy, a made-up number like a bajillion or a zillion, and yet the debt is very real. Of course, we're told that the debt isn't important. Modern experts who win our society's most esteemed prizes for intellectual achievement tells us that the debt doesn't matter because we owe it to ourselves. This is just pitiful logic. It's true that only $6 trillion, or 30% of U.S. debt, is owned by foreigners. The rest is owned by primarily the Federal Reserve, Social Security funds, U.S. banks, large U.S. companies, and the federal government itself. But I fail to see how this is relevant. A debt owed is a debt owed. It's not like the U.S. government could simply default on the Federal Reserve in cavalier fashion. That would render the central bank completely insolvent and cause a major currency crisis. Defaulting on trillions of dollars owed to Social Security and other pension funds would effectively destroy the livelihoods of hundreds of millions of people. Defaulting on the debt owned to the banks of the United States would cause the biggest financial crisis in U.S. history. Defaulting on $1+ trillion owed major U.S. corporations would bankrupt a number of large businesses and cause a deep recession. And defaulting on the Department of Defense would simply be idiotic. Congress would have to immediately bail out the military with emergency funds. So it's difficult to find any comfort in this "we owe it to ourselves" nonsense. The truth is that the debt absolutely matters. It's not some casual rounding error. It's a major issue that already sucks up hundreds of billions of dollars in tax revenue each year just to pay the interest. And that's at a time when the government's average interest rate is just 2%, an all-time low. But now interest rates are starting to rise from their historic lows. The 30-year bond yield is proportionally 50% higher than its record low from just 9 months ago. And it wasn't even long ago, just prior to the financial crisis in late 2007, that the government's average interest rate was around 5%. And even the number was considered incredibly low compared to previous decades. Yet if the average interest rate returned to just 5%, which would still be far below historic average, the government would spend more than $1 trillion each year just to pay the interest alone. Naturally, they will have to borrow even more money, which would add even more debt and make their interest payments go up even more. History is full of examples of debt bankrupting dominant superpowers, going all the way back even to the time of the ancient Egyptians. This time is no different. Debt is a ticking time bomb, and in this case, given the widespread consequences around the world, this bomb is nuclear. The idea of debt being a major issue our nation faces is nothing new to our government or current president, Donald Trump. The main catalyst to making this country great has been through the deficit spending and debt itself. Heck, our president has made an empire of debt. But this year marks the turning point of our great nation. Don't get me wrong, nothing's going to happen overnight, but it is incredibly foolish to ignore such a prodigious risk. Sure, maybe even by some miracle the situation will resolve itself. Maybe every foreign government wakes up tomorrow and simultaneously forgives the U.S. debt. We can hope for the best, but it's not likely. But you won't be worse off by taking astute, conservative steps to defend yourself from the obvious risk. Steps that make sense no matter what happens in the future, or even if it doesn't happen. Consider retirement, for example. For many viewers, you might still be decades away from retirement. Given current data and trends, it's entirely possible that the U.S. government's finances will have deteriorated into a default scenario by then. So it's hard to imagine that you'll be worse off for setting up a better, more robust retirement vehicle today. A structure that allows you far more latitude to generate stronger, safer returns while minimizing exposure to this debt bomb. There are so many other options such as physical cash, gold, silver, cryptos, better banks, and overall safe investment choices. Keep in mind, this ticking bomb is a real issue that you will have to face in one way or another. The government continues to live on the credit card of the United States and eventually defaults by inflating the national currency until it hyperinflates. Or 2, the government stops borrowing and President Donald Trump tries to restructure the debt by offering pennies on the dollar. Either way, the debt isn't going away, so eventually this bomb will go off. When this debt bomb goes off, what will you be holding in your possession? A then worthless currency? Or something tangible and precious from the earth itself? This shouldn't be hard to figure out. Take a minute and share this video with someone who needs to hear about this national debt before the clock does expire and goes boom.